Hi, everyone. Charles Hoskinson broadcasting from warm, sunny Colorado. Wanted to make a video, talk about a tweet that came out from Ada Northpool. He's a good friend of mine. He's a good guy and did amazing work over the last 2 years. And let me just read this off. Thinking about leaving Cardano community for good. So tired. I worked my ass off for 2 years and sacrificed a lot. I have been writing rationales for the ICC in the hospital with my son. What I see on Twitter is that the Constitution is crap and CF lawyers could have done it better. Now I see a sentiment that civics should likely have no budget, it seems. Governance is of no value, it seems, these days. Just clap on the shoulder. Good job. Now we'll take it from here. In any case, I will forfeit my current obligations and make a peaceful transition. So good luck, guys. For the record, I've been here since 2018, through sick and thin, but there is a limit to how much shit someone can take before they break. Criticism is fine, but please, for the love of God, come up with an alternative and don't just say you would have done it better. And if your alternative was presented and got less votes, maybe, just maybe, there was some quality in the Constitution that got more votes. And budget wise, cut it down if that's what you want. And don't come complaining to me when you realize that it had economic impact and value that you now are severely missing and competitors will be leapfrogging you on. It is not healthy for an ecosystem to take people who have been working in it since 2018, who've been with us through all the ups and downs, and criticize that person, his work, and the work of many other people again and again and again and again to a point where they just don't see any value in staying and continuing. Just a full stop fact. I've seen a lot of people criticize the Constitution. They say, "Oh, it's poorly written. The language is bad. We should hire lawyers, and they'll read it and fix it." Like a bunch of fucking amateurs spent the last 2 years on this, and no lawyers were involved. People who wrote constitutions for nation states were involved. People spent hours arguing over small pieces of language. 1,800 people from 50 different countries. It's not a perfect document. It's a consensus document, and ambiguity was left in on purpose because it needs to leave room for interpretation. And by no means is it a final document. And it's the same with the budget. And it's the same with people saying that no one should be compensated. And it's the same when people say that all the work that other people have done means nothing. This was my concern and why I got so angry when there wasn't unity amongst the core entities about the process, because I knew exactly what would happen. It would spill over into the volunteers who devoted their lives for the last 2 years working really hard to try to make this a reality. And we have some very foundational things before us as an ecosystem. It is not okay to criticize nakedly and say what you've done is shit. Full stop. And anyone doing that should not be part of the conversation. You have no place in the conversation. If you're going to criticize, you have an obligation to present an alternative and argue why that alternative is superior, and then you let them compete. Otherwise, we won't get anywhere because no matter what you do in a human endeavor, there will be a flaw with it. No matter how good your performance is, 99.9%, if the conversation is on the 0.01% that wasn't good, then there you have it. It's not that you won the gold medal, it's how come you didn't break a world record at the same time? You broke the world record, but you know what? You could have run faster. You stumbled a little bit there halfway through. That's our standard. That's how we're going to win. Well, you just saw the consequences of that. Good friend of mine who's been in the ecosystem for 7 years is now bowing out because the sacrifices he made meant nothing to those who criticize. And for those who criticize, no, those are the consequences. It doesn't give you a better system. It doesn't produce value. It destroys value. Those are the social consequences of constant, unrelenting, naked criticism. A lot of very good people sacrificed a lot time, effort, money to get us to where we're at today. Whether you want to acknowledge that or not, or you think some unelected Swiss bureaucrats could have pulled something out of their ass far better because they're just so much smarter than everybody. They're so much smarter than the entire world. They're so much more capable than everybody else. Great. Then let it compete and let people vote on it. Let people argue one way or the other. That's the only way this works as a decentralized government. And never, ever take people who are putting the time in and want this to work and beat them and beat them and beat them until a point where they don't see any value anymore and they want to quit, or else you won't get anywhere. In the coming months, we're going to be discussing the roadmap and the budget. And the roadmap that has been presented, and I'm going to spend this whole month talking about it, one day after another, is something I feel and many people feel will leapfrog the competition and get us where we need to go, where we're faster than Solana or as fast, but we kept our principles and integrity along the way. We're far more decentralized and far more resilient. It'll give us new markets to expand into, from everything the partner chains gives us to Bitcoin OS, Bitcoin DeFi, I should say. That whole thing, getting Bitcoin into Cardano and many other things, quality of life, alongside all the things we need to do to keep the ecosystem going. Now, is it perfect? No. And should there be criticism? Absolutely. Should there be alternative proposals? Of course. When you look at a budget, it's a pie and it's got slices in the graph. It's a pie graph. And each of those slices, we should discuss who else was needs to be included for that to be comprehensive, and are we getting good value there? But here's what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of people that will come and they will bike shed. They're going to spend the entire time nitpicking at small details here and there. And while they do that and gum up the entire process, the rest of the industry is moving forward. You want Cardano to go from 25 billion to 50 to 100 to 200? Okay, well, you got to invest in Cardano. And that's what the budget is doing. It's got to build the ecosystem up. And if we nitpick the fine details there and nothing gets accomplished, and the people that are building leave out of frustration, you will watch 25 turn to 15, turn to 10, turn to 5, and the ecosystem die. Just being real with you. That's what happens. So it's up to you. And there's a constructive way to engage. Don't assume you know everything. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Doesn't mean you trust them, but it does mean you ask them clarifying questions instead of immediately criticizing people. And also be willing to accept that not everything is going to work out so well. Some things will just fail, and that's okay. Walmart every day opens their doors knowing that some of their inventory that day is going to be stolen. Yet somehow, some way, they're still the largest retailer in the United States and wildly profitable, even though bad things happen. And that's going to happen to us. Should we be tolerant of it? Well, that's why you have a loss prevention department. So we can do the same. There can be audit and oversight, and there can be all these other people. But if you're so obsessed on what could go wrong, you never focus on where you want to go and how you want to get there. We spent 2 years as an ecosystem and an enormous amount of effort talking about governance and a constitution. And we finally get there. And the people who got you there are starting to quit because of the criticism that they're receiving. Naked criticism, which doesn't provide any value, doesn't get us anywhere. That's not healthy. And that's the canary in the coal mine for more complex and controversial things. As we enter into the budget process, if that behavior continues, we just won't get what we want. And what will end up happening is people with no business experience, people who've never built anything, will get in charge. And what they'll do is they'll mandate unrealistic things. For example, I saw some people over Twitter saying we should put the entire books of a company receiving treasury funding on a blockchain. Do you understand how fantasy that is? You receive a grant to build something, and the entire company has to go on the blockchain. So we'll hold that standard to Globant, a company that's publicly traded with tens of thousands of developers and billions of dollars going through. We'll hold that standard to Modus Create, which has hundreds of customers who were not Cardano. And now they have to expose all of their business operations and their financial operations to the general public and go into a standard above being a publicly traded company, to Microsoft, who may actually come in and collaborate with us. They're now going to have to rebuild their entire financial operating system. Oh, no, they all get exclusions. Well, then who has to do that? New people, old people? Or is it just IO? Or is it Emergo? Is it CF? It's an absurd statement. You should have an expectation of what value you're going to get and an audit and oversight function to ensure that that value was delivered and recourse in the event that it wasn't. But then to reach into an entity receiving a grant or compensation and say that their entire business system has to be subject to community oversight is absurd. But yet there's some people reflexively demanding that who have never run a business and don't know how businesses operate. And they're trying to push that through. And that's just one of dozens of absurd demands that are working their way into this process. So this is your canary in the coal mine. And there are social consequences to the criticism you levy. It's my job to be a shepherd and kind of show you different ways you can go. And as we close out the Voltaire work stream and finish it off, you all have to make some decisions. DREPs listening, constitutional committee members listening, of what type of ecosystem do we want to be and what type of behavior do we tolerate and what's reasonable and what's unreasonable. If we make unreasonable demands, we shouldn't be so surprised to see unreasonable outcomes. If we treat each other like shit, we shouldn't we should not be surprised to see that people leave. Good people, people who were my friends, who fought with me shoulder to shoulder for these years to get us to where we go. I'm pretty fucking pissed. I really am. It's not okay. It's not fair to burn these people out after they made sacrifices for all of us. This conduct has to stop. And the people we should listen to are the people who don't do these types of things, or else the ecosystem as a whole will not get where it needs to go. So let's talk about product this month. And next month, we'll talk about budget. And to those who are pumping on Twitter leaked budgets from Intersect, pushing salacious scandals, honestly, what do you want to achieve and accomplish with this? You're creating this false reality that people went into a dark room, decided who's going to get paid, and then it's just a formality that things get signed. Why would anybody even go and do AMAs if that was the case? Why would we even involve ourselves in the fiction of government if that was the case? It's not true. You know it's not true, but you lie to people. And then to reinforce your false reality, you take intermediate work products, which are discussion points, and then you leak them to Twitter as if they've already been decided. How is that fair to anyone? And how does that invite a process that will result in a good outcome? Nobody can have a conversation anymore. The minute you put anything in a spreadsheet, you're terrified that because it's in the spreadsheet, people will just assume it's going to happen and immediately start criticizing you. So before you do anything, you say anything, you have to check it 45 ways to make sure that it can't be criticized. You have to have a whole plan for a spreadsheet. That's why there needs to be a period of time for people to discuss things, brainstorm things, and put a package together and then present a final package for people to consider and people to compete with and discuss. Leaking intermediate forms is shameful. It achieves nothing. It harms the ecosystem, doesn't give anybody anything, and it invites criticism for the sake of criticism. It's a destructive process. And everybody who engaged in it, shame on you. You achieved nothing and you hurt the ecosystem for it. At the end of the day, there is no the budget until it is decided by the DREPs. And then when the DREPs get together, absolutely they have to get together. And then you criticize the DREPs trying to get together as some sort of exclusive Bilderberg event. Oh, it's invitation only. No, I'll tell you, they were voted on by you, the people. If somebody has 20% of the power, it's because you decided it, the ADA holders. And for them to communicate with each other, is a good thing. For them to have a discussion is a good thing. You'd rather they not, but they'll exclude people. Well, then you tell me who should be included. All D reps? Great. Should they all come together in person? Great. Who pays for that? Paid $5 million plus last year on the Voltaire work stream out of my own pocket. Should I pay for that? We don't have the budget approved, so there's no funding for that. Should Intersect pay for that? You shit all over them and you attack them and you say they're worthless and bureaucratic and achieve nothing and do nothing and shouldn't be paid. But then they should pay with some money somewhere from someone else to get all these people to come together. Have you thought that through at all? Well, digitally then. Okay, great. And you know what? Everybody should watch while they talk. So you know what that means? Grandstanding. That's all it is, grandstanding. You ever watch a Senate hearing? Is anything meaningfully ever discussed in a Senate hearing? Is any real business done in a Senate hearing when a senator is talking to the witness on the stand? Are they really having a meaningful, engaging, Joe Rogan style adult conversation, hours long about nuanced things? Or is it, these are my political beliefs and shame on you? And then the witness saying, well, I didn't do that. And then they say, oh, but you did. Shame on you. That's what it turns into. It becomes a spectator sport. And then you go to companies, you say, would you like to get involved in this? Oh no, I don't, because I'll just be in the crucible of criticism and I'll be burned and attacked. I don't want to get involved in this. I'm just gonna submit a budget proposal out there, and I don't want to be in the politics at all. I don't want to be connected to. Actually, I don't even want to submit a budget proposal. Oh no, I can't do that. So we're not allowed to meet. And if we are, it has to be theater and politics and grandstanding. And everybody has to meet. Even the guy was 0.00001% delegated who just registered yesterday, or else you've excluded somebody. And his vote is completely inconsequential whether the budget passes or not, or else it's not fair. And we can't pay for it out of the treasury, but somebody should pay for it. They should all meet in person. Do you listen to yourselves? Do you understand about this? This is madness. It's absolute madness. Take a step back, calm down, see the consequences of what you're saying and doing. Those who criticize, those who hot take. Either we follow a considered and deliberate systematic way of moving through this, or we don't. And if we don't, nothing will get done. It will be chaos. If we do, we will converge to an endpoint which produces something of value. We can debate whether it's perfect or not, but something of value will be produced. And we can reflect upon it and improve it for next year. And every year we can reflect upon it and improve it. If we're nice to each other, a lot of people will want to participate and try to make the process work. If we're not nice to each other and it's a destructive process, no one will want to participate. Everybody will back off and anarchy will emerge. It is what it is. And this is the choice that's before you. And I'm trying to tell all of you, look for canaries in a social process. And when you notice good people leave, you know you're doing something wrong. This should have not happened. It should have not happened. But it did. And it's a moment for us to reflect on. Take a moment. Think about it. It is what it is. And be reasonable. And as a last point, and I understand exactly where he's coming from because I feel this myself. When do you get the benefit of the doubt? Honestly, when do you get it? If you put in 10 years of your life and you put in all of this effort and you've tried your best every day to do right by everybody, and then every single day you're treated like a piece of shit criminal whose only objective is to steal and harm and mislead people and be dishonest. At what point do you throw in the towel and just say, fuck them all, walk off and go do something else with your life? Social systems require an acknowledgement that some people are not bad actors and they're trying their best to do good things. And if you're unwilling to do that, you shouldn't be surprised that after people have put a lot in, they just quit and leave because they recognize that their contributions are not respected, acknowledged, and are not worth it. They're not worth the struggle and the pain. And if your standard is every single person is the enemy, every single person's out to get us, if somebody misspeaks or doesn't say something I agree with, I should immediately respond in a very negative and harsh way. I'm sorry, you're just going to burn your ecosystem to the ground. You really are. And that's what happened here. You have an individual who put his best in and should have built up a social credit, a bank account of goodwill and an understanding and empathy. And instead, it was just withdraw, 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 attack, attack, attack. The social dynamics broke down. And there you have it. You're there. So we're a microcosm of a macrocosm. The world as a whole is one of very low trust. Social media has created profound rewards for naked criticism, and we are not rewarded for collaboration, rather, destruction. That's where the world is at right now. So, should Cardano be any different when people exist in this milieu? It is if we choose for it to be. And the leaders in the community, the DREPs, you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision of what type of DREP do you want to be, and you have to make a decision of what type of culture do you want this ecosystem to have. What you will respond to, what you won't respond to. You can decide to be destructive or collaborative. You can decide to engage in constructive criticism or naked criticism. You can decide to deposit in the emotional bank accounts and recognize the contributions people have made, or to not recognize them, not give people the benefit of the doubt, and relentlessly attack them, regardless of their track record and history and legacy. You can make these decisions, and based upon the collective whole of the decisions made, will determine what this process looks like and ultimately if it's successful or not. We've learned that Twitter can never be reality, and we've learned that bringing people together in person really does change the dynamic. It's one of the antidotes. It's why a lot of the really heavy lifting in the Constitution was not done through social media. It was done at workshops with physical people being together and a convention with physical people being together because it changes the social dynamic. You are not rewarded in person, looking at a person in their face, being a toxic asshole. The incentive system is flipped from Twitter. That's why it's probably important when the budget reconciliation comes together that there is an in person component to that amongst people who have a significant say in it. That's not the Bilderberg group coming together. That's just practical reality of trying to get it done and trying to get it over the line because everybody relies upon that as an ecosystem. But ultimately, you have to decide as a DREP and let the people who delegate it to you know. No matter what you say on Twitter, they will know by your actions, one way or the other. And the people who delegate to those DREPs, you also have to decide, do you want your DREPs to be constructive or destructive? And do you want these processes to be collaborative or adversarial? What do you want? Make that a prerequisite when you're starting to delegate to people of trying to decide that. For my part, I'm trying as hard as I can to bring people together and have constructive conversations and see where ways of working with people. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened that is deeply unfair and, in my view, incredibly damaging to the ecosystem done by certain actors. I have no control over it. I can't change it. We just have to move forward. And we also have to educate. People have to understand that you can't do everything. And there are notions of trade offs that will always exist in a roadmap and in a budget process and a constitution. You want Ouroboros Laos? We can do that as an ecosystem. Right now, some of the brightest people in the world are working within this ecosystem to figure out how to build it. And when they do, they're going to write it down as a SIP. And that'll get done this year, no doubt. But then you want it in market working on your computer. That's going to be a bit challenging if we have 4 nodes and 40% Haskell and 20% Go and 20% TypeScript and 20% Rust, because we have to wait for all four of those to catch up. Can't hard fork. That's just the fact of a multi-client environment. So what do you want? You want fast features or do you want resilience of multi-client? And if a person tells you you can have both, are you prepared to spend the money to have them all build at the same rate? Have we had that adult conversation? And when you read the roadmap and when you read the budget and you think about these things, what are we really funding? Because that's just one of dozens of things that you have to really think about. Is your goal competitiveness? Do you want certain features to be in market as soon as humanly possible? And are you prepared to sacrifice some client diversity for that? It's a conversation. And this is nothing against the people building clients. In fact, frankly, I feel it's a necessary thing that we do that. It's a question of when and how much coordination is existing there. My preference would have been to start with the when and how and work from that basis as opposed to just it cropping up and then trying to figure out a way to retrofit it back in. But that's where we're at. And we have to just work through it. A constructive process will take whatever we got, get people together, get people talking to each other, and we can backfill a when and how. And we can backfill a process. And we can figure out a strategy together. And I think we make everybody happy. A destructive process is people don't talk to each other. They just throw budget proposals out there with fantasy numbers inside of them, saying, well, this person spends this much. Look how great we are. And yeah, we'll be great. Or this whole process over here, which hasn't even been published yet, is bad and wrong. We should use this alternative process instead. Okay, great. And how does that build goodwill and trust and an acknowledgement of the work that's been done? It doesn't. It's just destructive. And does it get us anywhere? Not really. Doesn't heal anything. It just makes people start really hating each other and unnecessarily conflicting with each other. And we forget that we're all on the same side. Or at least I'd like to believe that. It's a USP of Cardano that we have the bravery to confront this issue head on. This is an issue every ecosystem has. And either they just choose to ignore it completely and let it exist in a state of anarchy, and that's Bitcoin, or they hide it inside the guts of their foundations and they pretend like everything's unified. And every now and then it spills out like it's doing in Ethereum right now, or it did in Tezos, or it did in Algorand, or it did in Polkadot. But then they try to push it back in and hide it again. And everybody likes to pretend it's not there. It takes a lot of courage for us as an ecosystem to put this dirty laundry out in the open and say, we got to figure this out. Because if we can, it means that there's no problem we can't solve. There is no roadmap we can't adapt to our own ends. And there's no strategy we can't execute. That's where greatness comes. The integrity to be honest, the courage to be disliked, and the ability to have difficult conversations and still somehow, some way get along and push forward. We'll lose some people along the way, but it was for a great cause, I'd like to believe. So I do believe our best days are ahead of us, but I do believe that these videos, as painful as they are to make, are necessary because they remind us of who we are and why we do what we do. And we can choose to succumb and embrace where the world is currently at, or we can earn the right to be better. And we prove that by how we work together. So, my call to action for all D reps is make that decision. And my call to action for the Cardano community is before you click like and retweet and before you dogpile, take a moment, really do, and think to yourself, is this productive? Is this constructive? Are we really making things work in the right direction? Are we getting things done? And do understand that there are certain entities in our ecosystem who are duplicitous, whose goal is to derail whatever processes are before us in the attempt to grab power. I do believe that. And I've made those beliefs clear, absolutely clear. So I will judge everybody by what they do. And I'm first to admit that I could be wrong about people's intentions, which is why I focus so much about the process and I focus so much about the output of that process. And if I see good people ground up and thrown away, I will make a video to point that out, that those good people got ground up and thrown away, at least if anything, to let them know that they mean something to me and their work was appreciated. And at least on our side, we treasured and valued it, and they were good friends. But more importantly, to the ecosystem as a whole, that it is a warning to you that if you keep doing these things, you'll lose all your good people and you're not going to have anything of value left behind. So you have to make a foundational decision about what the process needs to look like and how we're going to do that. I'll be here every step of the way, no matter how much criticism, no matter how many complaints, we will see this through one way or the other. And I'll do everything in my power. But unfortunately, I don't have the power anymore to unilaterally do this, to try to push this along. And I accept that I'll be the villain to some, and I accept I'll be criticized by some. But you know what? I just don't care because this is the work of a lifetime. We have to get it done. And this is my thesis about humanity. I honestly believe that people are basically good. And I honestly believe that people want to make the world a better place. I am not cynical. I'm optimistic. And I look at Cardano from that lens. And I believe that if we really try, we will get to the other side and we will all share in the bountiful rewards of the collective efforts. I really do. If I was a cynical person, I'd believe that this process would fail and it's not even worth going down and I should just retire and leave. So I'll keep pushing and I'll keep being in the trenches and I'll keep taking the hits and I'll show up to work every day and we'll just keep going and keep trying. This month, as I mentioned, we're talking about the roadmap, all the amazing things that we have and can do and achieve. And then next month, I'm going to focus a lot about the budget and talk about how do we get there financially, fully acknowledging that not everybody's been included who needs to be included. And the people who haven't been, I'll do everything in my power to try to reach out to them and find a way to get them involved in the process and get them cooperating. Some will say yes and some will say no. And to those who are trying to disrupt the process, I'll continue to fight you every step of the way. You know who you are, and we'll do everything in our power to make sure you don't win because it's important that this works its way through and we converge to something the ecosystem as a whole can live with and get it done. And together, I think we can get there. And to the D reps, we work for you now, and you got to lead. You got to step up. You got to make your own videos. That's your call to action. And you got to figure out how you're going to work within this process, work with each other, and step up to the plate. You're elected representatives. You're accountable to the people who delegated to you. And the people who delegate to you hold the people you delegate to accountable and demand that they act a certain way. Might not be the way I've suggested. Perhaps you do want protesty reps and all they do is just shit post all day. Well, that's your prerogative because you know what? That's your ADA and you get to make that decision. My job to remind you that if that's the road you go down, I really don't think it'll be a very valuable ecosystem. It'll be the 4chan of cryptocurrencies. And I've seen it happen throughout my career, decade and a half career in the cryptocurrency space. I've witnessed a lot of great ecosystems descend into that toxicity and collapse into themselves. They don't stand for anything. It's what happened to Ethereum Classic. Its only reason to exist was to protest and be angry about what Vitalik Buterin did. And then you said, well, okay, that's great, but what are we doing? Where are we going to go? How do we rally and get things done? And when there was really no intention for that, and it's just this ball of negativity and anger, there was no reason to be in it. That's why it's not anywhere. How many people have you run into said, you know what? I can't wait to go build in that ecosystem. It's the same for Bitcoin Satoshi's vision, the SV guys. The only reason it exists is a protest to deify a founder. But at the end of the day, how many people have you met who said, you know what? I want to build on that. I want to be in that culture. I wanna be in that environment. So that when we look at Cardano, that story's not written yet, and those crossroads have not been met yet, but we will get there, and we're gonna have to make some decisions of what does it mean to build in this ecosystem? The actions you take today, the collaborations you have today will answer that question. The actions, not the words. Everybody on their website can put, "We love people, we're collaborative, we're nice people." It's what you do that matters. It's how you act. It's what you like and subscribe. It's what you retweet. It's the benefit of the doubts. These types of things. It's how you treat the people who put in the work. That's what matters. You just have to make a decision. So I think we're going to get there. I really do. Northpool, you're a good man. I loved working with you, and I'm sorry it's come to this. I really am. Farewell, my friend. Here are to better days.